Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. K-Gro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Yes. Okay, here he is. Good morning, everyone. How are you today? It is Thursday, October 22nd. I have to adjust the microphone boom a little bit here, and it's going to make some creaking and groaning noises, I guess. Cooperating with things early in the morning. Everything fantastic. Okay, let's see. What's happening this morning? I don't know. We'll have to collect the news via Twitter, and hold on just a moment for Greg Dworkin to make his roundup of the news. I don't know what the prevailing concern of the morning is. Nothing really jumps out at me as especially a 5-alarm fire sort of situation this morning. That's good. Nice calm start to the day after a crazy one yesterday. And we had finished the show before the craziest news of the day broke onto the scene. And Bill hints at it in his morning tweet, letting everybody know the K-Gro in the Morning radio show is live now. Join me, David Waldman, K-Gro X, he says, as he makes the following important announcement. Whistle while you work. Yeah, we can all sing the old ditty. Whistle while you work. Hitler is a jerk. Giuliani tucked his weenie. Now it doesn't work. Boy. All right. The mind reels. Bill, the way you spend your mornings. Unbelievable. Thanks very much for starting us off. Yeah, I mean, that's the story of yesterday. We got some hint, I guess. I guess Greg was just psychic, or had seen the movie, or was just grabbed by the advertisements for it, and of course introduced the upcoming release, I guess, still of the second Borat movie. What do they call it? He's titling it, of course, in his mocking way. What is it? Borat subsequent movie film or something like that. Anyway. Borat 2, I guess, in colloquial English, coming out, and he had seen the banner ads for it on one or another of the news pages from which he was sending us stories, shared it with me in the background, and I don't know, my eye just skipped straight over exactly what I was looking at, but no, that wasn't the Borat story of the day. The Borat story of the day, I guess, was some of the sharp-eyed previewers, I guess. I don't know. I'd be curious about the provenance of the story and whether any PR people scooped it up and brought it out. But Rudy Giuliani makes an appearance in the movie. And if you're familiar at all with the Borat character or any of the Sacha Baron Cohen characters, they're all essentially about setting up, if not prominent American politicians or international politicians for that matter, then we'll say various extreme exemplars of social behaviors, chiefly in the United States so far, that demonstrate, let's say, our weakest points on very important issues very often. And he's not to everybody's taste. That's true. But anyway, you know the one. And the story is, this time they sought to entrap Rudy Giuliani in some sort of embarrassing situation, and they got it. And I think it seems to have worked out in, when it rains, it pours. It worked out in spades, I guess, for them in this one. As I understand the setup, I mean, does it really deserve discussion? As I understand the setup, in the second movie, Borat has traveled to the United States with his daughter. And we won't give away too much of the movie, I guess. You get the impact of the show on your own. But a supposedly 15-year-old daughter, in fact, played by an actress much older than that, as is usually the case. But she, too, an aspiring journalist. And I don't know how they arrange it. I don't know why anybody gets fooled by these things anymore. But apparently the daughter conducts the interview of Rudy Giuliani. And Borat and his daughter are, at heart, right-wing reactionaries from Kazakhstan. And so they give Rudy Giuliani a friendly interview. And the interview is apparently a bunch of softballs and a glowing interview for Giuliani, and then afterwards, I guess she asks him to come back to her hotel room, and I guess the hook here is, well, I'll unwire you from the microphone, the lavalier microphone that we have wired you up with for the interview. But hey, make yourself comfortable. Maybe you want a drink. And Giuliani proceeds to, he says, unwire or get unwired for the microphone and then tuck his shirt back in, which is what his claim is, by lying down on the bed in the hotel room, which is an unusual way of handling things. Again, his claim is that he is simply tucking his shirt back into his pants. Everybody else, apparently, who has seen the show, says, no, what we're watching is Giuliani lying down on the bed and sticking his hands down his pants, which, is unbecoming at the minimum, I guess. And of course, he's in the room with what he maybe not believes is a 15-year-old girl. And it's all a setup, of course, for Borat, but it doesn't look that good for Giuliani. Giuliani, of course, insists, like I said, that he was only tucking his shirt back in, and it happens all the time. Every time I put on a microphone for an interview, I lie down on the interviewer's bed to tuck my shirt back into my pants while lying down. It's not an easy way of doing it, but who knows? He's an older gentleman. I don't know. We'll give him the benefit of the doubt for now, because who cares? Everybody else is not giving him the benefit of the doubt. And I guess you could go see the Borat movie and see for yourself and eventually decide. The thing is, I guess Giuliani, I think, also hedging against the possibility that you and everybody else in America who has become interested in this will go and see the film and say that doesn't look like he's tucking his shirt back in his pants, and will dispute whether or not that's possible. Now, Giuliani also says, well, I think the film has also been digitally manipulated so that it looks more like I'm sticking my hands down my pants and, I guess, digitally manipulating myself, as opposed to tucking my shirt in. I don't know what that's like, and I suppose everyone will become a forensic expert on the right, and we'll be hearing of all the usual alt-right figures coming out insisting that they know all about film editing, and it's totally obvious that it's been manipulated. But I don't know. It also seems to me that if that was really what they had captured on film, I guess that's where the provenance of the story plays into it for me. I'd like to know where their Borat film PR people hyping this thing, because they've been sitting on that footage for an awful long time. It's odd that it would wait, and it would only ostensibly be noticed by people previewing the film prior to its release to see that. You would think that the Borat people knew that they had some gold. But anyway, it should be some cringeworthy times between now and then. And I don't know. I guess I think the thing comes out on Friday. That is, the movie comes out on Friday. I don't know. I'm not talking about Giuliani. And no guesses about when that comes out. Although Zoom being what it is, you never know these days. All right, Greg Dworkin is here. We don't use video at all in this program. I have no idea what's going on, and you'll never know either. And that's the way you like it. Hi, Greg. How are you?
Hi. So for a family-oriented show, you're certainly talking about a lot of sexual material.
Ooh, yes.
Have you covered Jeffrey Toobin?
Yeah, we discussed it a little bit. The discussion with Armando was like this. Let's not talk about Jeffrey Toobin for 15 minutes. And then we said, essentially we said, well, it is what it is. Don't do that. And if you get fired for it, you get fired for it. We don't care about
Giuliani,
where
let me just add Maureen Dowd saying, I've seen the Giuliani
Jerry.
moment in Borat 2. It's even wilder than it sounds beyond cringe.
Yeah,
and we'll just leave it at
that. And then we'll see the movie, and then we'll talk about it for an hour.
I won't see the movie.
Okay. Well,
I just want to see
neither.
the ends.
Yeah. Oh, you've already seen that. I know you were very prescient. You didn't know what you were previewing for people yesterday by dropping that hint.
I was just trying to convince people to wear masks.
They're doing it, and Rudy should have worn one over his whole face, and then the film would have had no value.
Right. Well, Rudy has no value. And, the bigger picture here is when you step back is that his whole Hunter Biden thing has no value. We got a lot of polls to go over, but I want to do narrative first.
All right.
And, you have to step back and look at the big picture. That's important because today is, of course, the last of the presidential debates.
Oh, right.
Or as the Boston Globe puts it, after tonight at 10:30, the campaign's over.
Okay.
Because there's nothing else. I mean, everybody then sits and waits and sees what happens. And they go and point out in this Boston Globe piece that,
Yes.
you know what, there really are no such thing as October surprises. It's a myth. And, you know, look at what happened. Look at what happened in October, going back
Take
to
a
the
look
beginning
at
of
it.
October when Ruth Bader Ginsburg died.
Right.
Nothing has changed. And
No,
so
not
you
yet.
go and look at the
Maybe
whole
later
entire,
today.
sure, there's surprises, but they don't change the trajectory of the presidential race. This one has been set for years. And so nothing's going to change that either. It's not going to tighten. It may or may not widen. We don't know. You got a lot of
To be sure.
undecided people, to be sure, right, who may decide one way or the other, and we'll see what happens. But we do have a lot of information about what's happening, not just through the polls, but through early voting, in the one place where it matters and you can actually figure out what's going on, and that's Nevada through John Ralston. So we'll get to that. But the bigger picture is that you have a damaged person, which is Donald Trump, who happens to have been installed in the White House for various and sundry reasons, and who has never gone beyond being damaged, and he's still damaged.
True.
And he's running for re-election, and he's losing. And that's, you know, an important part of all of this.
Complete breakfast.
So what does he do when he loses?
Yeah.
Or how does he handle
Good question.
the fact that he's losing? Not so much what happens after November 3rd, but what happens as he's handling the fact that, or not handling the fact that he's losing. You know, and that's really the thing I want to focus on here, because it puts a lot of the other things that you'll see from this point onward into, I think, a more understandable framework. So I'm going to point you to The Atlantic, this really excellent piece by Franklin Foer. Trump is waging psychological warfare against Biden. In targeting Hunter Biden, the president is attacking the Democratic nominee's greatest emotional vulnerability. This will have relevance for tonight's debate, of course, but it's also the big picture of how Trump decided to run against Joe Biden.
All right.
Don't forget, what he really likes to do is to run against Hillary Clinton, but he couldn't.
Yes, right.
Then he wanted to run against Bernie Sanders, and he couldn't do that either. So he was a bit flummoxed and trying to figure out how to go after Biden, and a lot of the stuff he was doing just fell completely flat. So when pressed and cornered, what he does is he lashes out at his opponent in order to basically say, look, if I go down, I'm taking you down with me. Mm-hmm. We saw that in the Hillary Clinton era debates, where he tried to get all of Bill Clinton's sexual peccadillo women who he could find to come to the debate and sit in the first row and stare at Hillary. The debate commission wouldn't let him. So he called a press conference beforehand and lined them all up.
Yeah. And wow, that was
but the point was to try to get into Hillary's head.
Yeah.
And may or may not have worked. I mean, most people thought she won all of the debates, but he wound up being president. And
yeah, I guess he did.
The point is, he thought he was losing, and that's what he wanted to do. He just wanted to hurt her.
All right.
That's who he is.
Yeah.
And so in this particular case, he's losing to Biden. He can't stand that he's losing, so he wants to hurt Biden.
All right.
And so that's why he keeps bringing up Hunter Biden. Mm-hmm. He got impeached over it. That didn't stop him. It's not like he sees this as a successful or unsuccessful campaign ploy. That's not what he's doing. Mm. He's trying to hurt Joe Biden in the most visceral, simplest, explanation of what hurt means. Yeah. He's not trying to hurt him politically. He's trying to hurt him.
Yeah, that's
as a person.
Good point.
That's what he's doing. Okay, and that's what to look for in tonight's debate, by the way.
All right.
But when you look at it that way, then you go back and look at the first debate and say, of course he was trying to get Biden to stutter. That's exactly what he was trying to do. He was trying to hurt Biden.
It's a lot easier to believe now.
Yes.
In that
and
context.
So then you look at the story, for example, in the Washington Post today, Trump weighs firing FBI director after election as frustration with Wray and Barr grows. Why is Trump mad? Because the whole thing with Giuliani and the stupid Hunter Biden fake Russian disinformation thing just hasn't worked. And Trump's frustrated about that. And so what he wanted to do is have this thing come out that there's this laptop that magically appeared after circulating Kazakhstan for for a year.
Okay.
Suddenly appeared in a Maryland, repair shop, provenance unknown. And he wanted to use that as an excuse to recreate James Comey. Oh, my goodness, there's all this stuff on. I mean, I said the other day, he's like the Beach Boys doing their greatest hits way after they've aged out of the rock business, right? And so what he wanted to do is say, oh, there's this stuff on this laptop. How about 10 days before the election, the FBI announces that they're going to investigate what's going on that laptop. That's what he wants. He wants the announcement of the investigation, the very same thing he got impeached for when he was trying to do it with Ukraine.
Which means he learned his lesson. Thank you,
Susan
exactly.
Collins. Thank you, Susan Collins. So the whole idea is that this is what he's attempting, and he's getting frustrated because Christopher Wray's not playing along, and Barr is not playing along. And there's not going to be a investigation announced prior to the election, which is what he wanted. And so now he's mad, and what does he do when he's mad? He tries to hurt people. So he announces or he leaks that he's really angry with Wray. He'd like to fire Wray. Let's hurt him that way. But the main thing is all of this story is still trying to hurt Joe Biden at the most personal, visceral level. Yes. And so that's what I'm looking for in the debate tonight. He's going to be nice because sociopaths can be charming. And so he'll be charming for the first 3 minutes, and the pundits will say, oh, look at that pivot.
Today he finally became president.
Right. The campaign is over at 10:30, but at 9:03, he's finally pivoted into being the nice guy we always knew he was because he's nice to us. Yeah. When he's not trying to kill us.
Right. Not nice to them at all.
Or infect us or say bad things about us behind our back. And, of course, he's a big fan of Kristen Welker, so he's going to attack her too. But he's going to be nice to them for the first 3 minutes, and everybody's going to say, oh, my God, Van Jones and Dana Bash will say, oh, look at that pivot. He's a completely different person, as if, that's true, which it isn't. But then he's going to do his best to hurt Joe Biden. That's what to look for today. And so, what you're seeing play out is a sociopath trying to hurt somebody and getting frustrated with the fact that there are certain people like Christopher Wray and maybe even Bill Barr in this case, oddly enough, the press who's not going along with this, Biden who's not going along with this. He's getting frustrated with people who are not allowing him to hurt somebody. And that's what you're looking at. Bad. That's the big picture. Everything else is detail.
All right. Yeah. I mean, as we've heard for a long time, that cruelty was the point, and this will be
that early, and it's just absolutely correct.
We'll see it clearly illustrated. I mean, it's just the same way of restating the same point, but I think, people will see it play out on their television sets in the next couple of days in ways that there are still people for whom the other cruelties simply don't resonate in the same way. So, okay, you're late to the party. I could hope for some more empathy, but I believe you'll see where we're going in the next couple of days, and 40% of you have already voted because you saw already where we were.
Yeah, some places, 50% may have voted, North Carolina. It depends how many people turn out in the end. Always hard to say exactly how many people you need to vote for you or your party needs to lead by in order to feel safe about the election on Election Day, because you don't know how many people are going to show up on Election Day. So don't even begin to play that game. You can only play that in Nevada.
I have begun to play that game. Unfortunately, yes. All right.
because it won't help you. You'll think that you have enough votes, and then it'll turn out that Election Day is so enormous that maybe your assumptions were wrong.
111% of the vote. So I'll never. Don't worry about that. I'll never burn out on that.
So what Franklin Foer writes is, without a coherent message or an affirmative vision for a second term, and by the way, that's one of the reasons why he was mad at 60 Minutes. Because Leslie Stahl asked him, what's your term? What's your second term here? Well, I'm going to run on the greatest economy ever. Yeah, but it wasn't the greatest economy ever. Oh, you can't say that to me.
Okay, I'm leaving.
I'm getting mad. Without a coherent message or an affirmative vision for a second term, Trump has clearly been betting his reelection on what military planners would call PSYOP, or a psychological operation. That is, he hopes to use gamesmanship to destabilize the mind of his adversary, forcing him into a moment of anger or incoherence that illustrates his lack of fitness for office. Too old and out of it is how Trump put it. His attacks on Hunter Biden should be understood as the pillar of this strategy. Well, getting him to stutter didn't work, so now he's going to try this.
Okay.
Although Trump might not have deep reservoirs of empathy or much patience for understanding an opposing point of view, he does excel at one psychological discipline, a bull's eye for an individual's point of greatest emotional vulnerability. And then talks about how he attacked other opponents, Little Marco and low energy Jeb.
Yeah.
And he goes over the Paula Jones, Kathleen Willey, and Juanita Broderick, trying to get them into the hall as guests, and that didn't work. And, why he's picking on Hunter Biden. And he says that fragile part of him, Biden, is what Trump is furiously poking now. He's cruelly lashing Biden not to explain the relevance of an esoteric scandal that doesn't directly indict the ethics of his opponent. And that explains the part, by the way, of, what's this got to do with anything? Hunter's not running. He's not in government. Why are you bringing this up?
Right.
You're asking the wrong question.
Yes. Good point.
That's got nothing to do with it. He's bringing it up because he wants to hurt Joe Biden. So all your questions about the relevance of Hunter Biden's actions are not relevant.
Yes.
But because he seems to hope that this raising the subject will induce an unbecoming outburst of emotional on stage. On Trump's own terms, the strategy has some logic. Earlier this week, Biden responded to a CBS News reporter's questions about Hunter with a burst of apoplexy. Well, that happened to be a CBS News reporter who terribly handled, other issues in a right-wing kind of way. And Biden knew that history, and that's why he was mad at that particular reporter. It was a demonstrable, justifiable annoyance, not a burst of apoplexy. So, trying to make it into a both sides here thing here, doesn't work. It is true that Biden has a temper, and it is true that his job is to not, lose it.
Right.
You saw in the first debate, he said, just shut up, man, And that had its points. It's good for male strength, probably turned off women, but you could debate that. You probably don't want those things because you don't want to inject something where you don't know how things are going to turn out. It's good to look genuine. You probably made, more of it than not, but you'd rather have the one where you use the zinger you practiced. That's just, the way debate coaching goes.
Yes. Unless that was it.
So we're going to watch for that. We're going to see that. And Trump is going to try to make Joe Biden lose his temper, and he's going to use Hunter Biden as the tool to do that. And that's the game.
Well,
and as Fleur says, more likely the strategy will boomerang against Trump.
Yeah. In all
when
likelihood.
the president tried to raise the subject of Hunter in the last debate, he managed to push his opponent into a moment of astonishing vulnerability. But instead of making Biden look disoriented, Trump's attack evoked a sort of raw compassion and pure paternal love.
Yeah. Seemed to work
that
out.
Campaign advertising brains would kill to capture in a 30-second spot.
Aha.
But as Rupert Murdoch's outlets and the president himself continue to flog the scandal, a man who's recovering from addiction, a brother whose misery is the apparent shame of having survived his siblings, et cetera, Hunter Biden's strategy.
Right.
Tragedy. He's being sacrificed to a president who views the sadistic exploitation of family tragedy as his own best hope of salvation. In its grotesqueness, this is a near-perfect closing argument, a presidency distilled. He's right. Basically, when I say Trump is a sociopath, maybe that's not fair. Maybe he's just a sadist.
Well, I think he could probably be both. And,
he could.
it would probably add to
that's
the
lens
diagnosis.
to which everybody should be looking at this whole Hunter Biden thing.
This is very...
Not
I
arguing
like it.
about whether or not this particular email was true, but that particular email wasn't. And so they're trying to introduce 3 good ones with 1 fake one, so you'll never know. Forget about all that. That's not what's going on here.
Yeah. Well, this is a good point. I mean, and it gives you a good reason for those who aren't inclined to parse it, and I think at this point that's a lot of us. This gives a good reason not to, and a great kind of platform from which to answer annoying press questions about it for Joe Biden going forward and saying, I understand what you're trying to do here, but do you understand what he's trying to do here? You're asking this question. You think you're trying to get to the bottom of something that matters,
Right.
but
you
you're
asked this
not.
question because my opponent brought it up. My opponent brought it up because he's losing.
Yeah, and
so let's just
not
put
looking
this
to
into
run
perspective here. Next question.
Yeah. I think that, I mean, it'll have varying levels of effectiveness with different reporters, but this is, I think,
days left,
very
so
good
what?
distillation. That's right. There aren't that many reporters who will find an acceptable way around that barrier for now. So I like this. This is a good point and a good place for Biden and surrogates to launch pivots and defenses from.
Right. Meanwhile, and so we'll finish out the first segment here. I'll throw one article here. I'm not going to go into too much, but it was just interesting. Ross Douthat. Douthat. How do you pronounce his name?
I don't know. It certainly sounds like I'm going to put on my doubt hat and read his article right now.
I doubt that I'm going to read too many of his columns, but this particular one, Trump is giving up against both the coronavirus and Joe Biden. The president's strategy increasingly accepts defeat, and it's true.
It's true, right?
He's losing, and what he's trying to do is he's trying to hurt Biden on the way out. But there was an interview not just with Donald Trump on 60 Minutes. There was a Joe Biden interview for 60 Minutes.
Yes.
And this answer will drive a lot of conversation today, says Jake Sherman. Biden says he'll create a national commission to create a plan as to how to reform the court system.
Yes.
Norah O'Donnell says, what's going on here? And Biden says, if elected, what I will do is I'll put together a national commission, a bipartisan commission of scholars, constitutional scholars, Democrats, Republicans, liberal, conservative, and ask them over 180 days, come back to me with recommendations as to how to reform the court system.
Okay.
O'Donnell says, you're telling us you're going to pack the court. And Biden says, no, this is well beyond packing. This is a live ball. We're going to have to do that. And you're going to find there's a lot of conservative constitutional scholars who are saying it as well. We can't turn the Supreme Court into a political football.
Okay.
That's it. That's your soundbite.
Yeah. I mean,
fine.
Okay.
That's excellent.
Yeah, it's all right. I like O'Donnell apparently determined to make it into the question that she thought it was going in. Kind of silly. All right, we'll be right back. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for K-Grow in the Morning, and I've learned that I either need to update these announcements more often or stop saying that the announcements are brand new. What's not new is that this message, too, is a call for your support in keeping the K-Grow in the Morning show on the air. My thanks go out to all of you who do support the show through your donations. The stats say that K-Grow in the Morning fans download our program about 2,000 times each weekday. But our donors make up only about 8% of our daily listeners. Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple to make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KGrowX gets you straight to our donation page. If we're helping keep you sane during the Trump era, consider what that's worth. $1 a day? 50 cents? One thin dime? We do about 20 shows a month, so pick a number, do the math, and head to patreon.com/KGrowX to let us know. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. Welcome back now to the K-Grow in the Morning show here on Everett's Radio. We continue on with Greg Dworkin. We were just talking about...
I want to read the full quote here that Biden said because it's so good.
Sure.
They're talking about reforming the court, and Biden's coming up with some ideas on how to look at it. And Norah O'Donnell's trying to pin him down and saying, so you're going to pack the court. And Biden's saying, no, I'm an adult, and we're going to sit back, and we're going to think about it, and here's how we're going to think about it. Mm-hmm. Oh, so you're packing the court then. So it's a typical Norah O'Donnell, who I don't love as a interviewer. And she says, this is a live ball. And Biden says, oh, it's a live ball. No, it's a live ball. We're going to have to do that. And you're going to find there's a lot of conservative constitutional scholars who are saying it as well. The last thing we need to do is turn the Supreme Court into just a political football. Whoever has the most votes gets whatever they want. Presidents come and go. Supreme Court justices stay for generations. That's the quote. And, it's a good one.
Uh-huh.
And so Kevin Collins, who is a pollster and political scientist, says this is great, both on the substance, because court reform requires serious consideration, but not messaging bills, and on the politics. But I hope the commission includes some political scientists and not just law professors. But these are adults trying to wrestle and grapple with real issues, such as how do you deal with voter suppression when you've packed the court with people who are into voter suppression?
Yes.
What's the grown-up way of dealing with this? And the reporters are saying, never mind that. I need a soundbite saying, yes, I'll pack the court. Please say that for me.
Yeah.
and they're not getting what they want, and the reporters get a little frustrated. And that
I'll
goes
say
back
that.
to what we were saying before in terms of the Hunter Biden thing. After the campaign ends tonight at 10:30, they can ask whatever questions they want. And with 2 weeks left, Biden doesn't really have to answer them, and they're stuck. And so they're going to, just have to deal with it.
Yes.
It is.
Right. That's true. That's a good point. I mean, this is going to be the answer, and you can't make it into one that it isn't. Is not a bad strategy with 2 weeks or less left. I mean, it's essentially like saying, yeah, my answer is in my tax returns, and you're not getting them. I put my answer in Donald Trump's tax returns.
Right,
Go look
exactly.
for it. I can wait that out. It's interesting. It'll frustrate some progressives who want a strong signal, but it's the thing that you have to say now to finish out the election. Just like we keep saying, don't be complacent. Go out there and fight as if it's a lot closer than it really is. Well, also don't flub things.
Are you trying to play psyops with me?
Yes.
Tell me not to be complacent. Tell me that I should approach this as if we're 35 points down. All the hot buttons that just get me angry. Is that what you're trying to do?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, some people hand you that line all the time, and to do that and then not recognize that there's a role to be played here by the candidate too.
For example,
well, that seems a little silly.
Voters,
Yeah. Right.
Really
So
don't look on Twitter to see, it's Thursday.
Yeah.
Let's check Twitter to see whether I should be complacent today or not. I wasn't yesterday.
Right, but today
But maybe I should be complacent today. I don't know how I should feel tomorrow. Let me check Twitter.
Yeah. If it worries you, check back in a couple of weeks for one thing and see how things are going. But yeah, this is going to be a long process. He's not going to do it quickly.
It's going to be an incredibly high turnout. All right. There is no complacency. Just wipe the word. Ain't happening.
All right.
Here's some polls that came out yesterday, which I think put all of this in perspective and a little bit of prediction from John Ralston, and then we'll get to what 538 is saying about it. So what I wrote yesterday is it was a really bad day for Trump in the polls. Okay, we have Pennsylvania. Suffolk has Biden up 6 at 49-42. The Quinnipiac poll has Biden plus 8, 51-43. And CNN has Biden plus 10, 53-43. That's all Pennsylvania. And Biden wins Pennsylvania, wins the election. Because if he wins Pennsylvania, he's winning Michigan and Wisconsin. And it's going to be over. So, those numbers, it's not just 6, 8, and 10 lead. It's that Biden's at 49, 51, 53. If Biden's at 50, he's not going to lose it. That's what you're looking at. We have 2 weeks left. These are all assuming the polls are correct. That's a different discussion. Florida. Civics, Biden plus 4 at 51-47. CNN, Biden plus 4 at 50-46. Again, over 50 in Florida. Iowa, Emerson has Biden even at 48-48. Emerson's a terrible pollster. Siena has Biden plus 3. That's New York Times, 46-43. A lot of undecideds. And Monmouth has Biden plus 5, 51-46. And the Q poll had Texas even at 47-47. So you're leading in Pennsylvania, Florida, Iowa, and tied in Texas with 2 weeks to go. That's good position for Biden and terrible for Trump. Then we have more. We have Fox polls out. Michigan, Biden 52-40. Pennsylvania, Biden 50-45. Wisconsin, Biden 49-44. And we'll have one more Wisconsin poll from MU Law next week, I think. Ohio, Trump 48, Biden 45. That was the only clunker, although that's still too close to call. And then Reuters had Biden in Arizona 49-46 with Kelly up 51-43, the Democratic senatorial candidate. And Florida, Biden up 50-46. So another 4-point poll. Basically, all the polls yesterday had Florida, Biden up by 4 and hitting 50%. So that's a pretty darn good day for Biden. He wins Florida, just like he wins Pennsylvania, or if he wins Ohio, it's over.
Okay.
Right? And Pennsylvania may be the linchpin in terms of the whole strategy, but not as an important state, as Armando has frequently said, because Pennsylvania counts slow and Florida counts fast. So does North Carolina. So, we're looking at those. So that's what's going on with the polling. And then Nevada, this is really interesting. This is John Ralston with his early voting block for this year. Again, you have to, like Arizona, Maricopa County and Phoenix and the surrounding areas is like most of the state.
Right.
So Clark County is most of the state in Nevada. And so that's why he calls it the Clark firewall. The whole Democratic strategy in Nevada is to build up the votes in Clark County,
yes,
and use it as a firewall. So when the rurals come in, which are going to be for Trump, your lead that you've already banked in Clark County will maintain you. So that's the whole idea. And he says, I'm going to use the latest Secretary of State update to show you where we are officially. This will be conservative, not using the return mail ballots, but only accepted ones. So that shaves us about 10,000 off the Clark County firewall, leaving it at 50,000 and not 60,000 because not all those return ballots have been accepted. So he's going to be conservative about it.
All right.
Might be 60,000, but it's at 50,000. So 20% of active voters have already cast ballots. If turnout is 80%, a quarter of the vote is in. And if it's 90%, 22% of the vote is in.
And that's a lot.
The Democrats have a 55,000 ballot statewide lead under this conservative scenario, 46-32. Mm-hmm. Just going, not by, because you don't know how people vote, you know how they're registered. So every county but the biggest, Clark, and the smallest, Esmeralda, are over 20% now. Clark's at 16. So there's more Clark vote to come in. That's
okay.
Biden's best area. What do the numbers mean? Well, let's give you a few scenarios. If we stopped, the election were held right now with these numbers. If both candidates receive votes for 90% of their base, okay, and the others split evenly, 45-45, Biden wins by 42,000 votes.
Okay.
If both get 90% from their base,
yes,
and the ones who aren't Democrats and the ones who aren't Republicans go 50-40 for Biden, he wins by 50,000. If they go 40-50 for Trump, Biden wins by 35,000. Every scenario you look at, Biden wins by about 40,000 votes.
All right. I guess we'll wait and let's see.
Right.
That's
so he says, so you can see even under the most favorable scenarios, Trump is losing by double digits in Nevada. You see the work Team Trump has to do. There's still time to change the dynamic. In other words, people are still voting. So as they come in, the proportions of who's a Democrat and who's a Republican may change. The in-person vote should go toward the Republicans. The mail-in should go toward the Democrats. And so what you're seeing is every day, mail-ins are building a bigger lead for Democrats than the in-person vote is leading for Trump, and that's because the rurals have a smaller population, but Trump's getting a real high percentage of them. Mm-hmm. And the problem is you never know how many people in the end are going to wind up voting. In this particular scenario, Ralston is building a model that says basically 90% of the population will vote. We don't know that. Maybe it'll be only 80. And maybe a lot of it will come in beforehand. But and not that much on election day, or maybe it'll be 95 with an enormous turnout on election day. You just don't know in this crazy year because everybody's motivated. So these scenarios, which he's done for years and have always turned out to be pretty accurate, are just basically telling you that Biden's doing what he needs to do. He's hitting his marks.
All right.
In order to win, you have to build up the vote in Clark County in Nevada, and Biden is in fact doing that. That's what we know. It's not a prediction. You still need another week or so to get the vote in and see whether the numbers hold and so on and so forth, and to be sure and all of that. Biden's doing fine in Nevada. And the reason I'm going through this exercise is Nevada's the only state you can do that. It's the only state where you have all of the numbers, you have years of doing this. This is the way they've done it for a long time. You have an idea of what the vote means. Florida is similar, but not exactly, because this year the voting patterns are reversed. More Democrats are mailing it in. More Republicans are showing up in person. It's the opposite of what normally happens. And so you don't really know what to make of the numbers. You don't know what kind of lead you need before Election Day in order to feel confident about Election Day. You do in Nevada, you don't in Florida, or anywhere else for that matter. North Carolina is the other one where we have pretty good numbers. And it's astounding to me that half the population's already voted. Half the voting population, voting eligible population, BEP. Half of them have already voted. And they'll probably have 70% in before, Election Day. And we just don't know what kind of election day turnout Trump is going to be able to gin up. By the way, those 40 million people that have already voted don't really care about Hunter Biden's laptop and what happens in tonight's debate.
It doesn't matter if they do at this point.
Right. So, that's, again, the background in terms of how things are going at this time. So 538 says, okay, so they have they're forecasting Biden's going to have an 8.2 lead in the national polls. Right now it's like 9.9. Mm-hmm. And is 9.9 really different than 10.5? Nate Cohen and the wonks and the quants can sit and say, okay, this shows that Biden has lost the point, and so tightening is happening because it's a point less or less than a point. And everybody else will look at it and say, basically it's the same as it was.
Okay.
Right? He's got an 87% chance to win. That's what it was a week ago. And so things haven't changed.
Oh,
and in the individual states, here's their average and the percent chance of winning. Michigan, Democrats +8. That's Biden +8, 92% chance of winning. Minnesota +8, 91. Nevada +8, 90. All right. And Ralston thinks this actually looks like a double-digit lead in Nevada, giving you an idea of maybe the Democrats are underperforming their polls. Maine, Democrats +12, 90% chance of winning. New Hampshire, Democrats +10, 87% chance of winning. Pennsylvania, Democrats +6, 87% chance of winning. Wisconsin, Democrats +6, 86% chance of winning. That already gives Biden 278 electoral votes. Mm-hmm. Nebraska, 2, Democrats +5, 78% chance of winning. Florida, Democrats +3, 72% chance of winning. And here with Florida, I'm going to play the RCP game and say, forget about the way Nate does it. The last 4 polls have said Florida +4, so let's give Democrats +4. That's not far from where Armando thought Florida was +5. Maybe it will be. But right now, however you look at it, Democrats between 3 and 5 points there, 72% chance of winning. It's Florida. It's going to come down to the last minute. We don't know. But Biden doesn't need Florida to win. North Carolina, Democrats +3, 68% chance of winning. Arizona, Democrats +3, 67% chance of winning. Maine, 2, it's a tie, 51% chance goes to the Democrat. Georgia, as Wolf Blitzer would put it and be correct this time, a statistical dead heat. The Georgia lead for the Democrats is 0. And the chances of winning is 50%.
Okay.
A true toss-up for Georgia. But Greg Bluestein over at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution points out that if the youth in Georgia vote, as it looks like they may, that really may change everything.
Okay, youth.
Iowa, Democrats 0, 48% chance of winning. So Iowa, Ohio, Democrats -1, Texas, Democrats -2. It's amazing Texas is that close. Alaska, Democrats -7, 20% chance of winning. So there it's all about the senatorial race, which we haven't covered today. We'll do that on Monday.
Okay.
And so, the picture here is Biden's really solid position. He's fighting not for the 278 electoral votes in this scenario. He's fighting to see how big he can make it. How much over 300 electoral votes can he get?
Yeah. All right.
Let's do it. So that's not a bad place to be. So if you see a poll that comes in, oh my goodness, it's only a +6 for Biden in the national vote. I'm used to double digits. I like that 18 I got from PRRI, and that was like 5 days ago.
Yeah. All right.
I only got a 6 or an 8 or a 9. Whatever. The big picture is things aren't changing all that much. And so if you have 10 polls, some are going to be lower than the average, some are going to be higher than the average. Don't freak out when you see them. Okay. You don't need to hide under the desk. You can come out.
No time to spend any under the desk anyway. You're supposed to be out making calls.
Good people do that. I mean, I'm not making fun of them. I'm just telling you, you don't have to.
Okay. Then don't.
Okay, so the average today is 9.9. Okay, and what do we see in today's polls? Well, yesterday, didn't we have an IBD tip poll that got everybody freaked out because it was so close? Well, today it's 5. It's a little higher than yesterday. USC Dornsife, the sine wave poll, is 11 and 12, and Morning Consult is 9.
Okay.
Right? Morning Consult's often 9. Sometimes it's 8. So basically, and USC Dornsife not only is not changing. It's not tightening. But when you look at the 7-day model instead of the 14-day model, it's actually increasing for Biden right now.
Okay.
Okay.
That's
Yesterday was at 10.86. Today is 12.58 predicted percentage of votes. So you can expect an upswing in the next couple of days based on that, because we're in the sine wave part where it actually lengthens.
All right.
So when you even it out over 14 days, you don't see that much of a change. But what it tells you is that don't look for tightening. It's not happening.
Okay. But what if it does?
So you have an idea of what's going on.
To be sure, it
there.
could.
Max Boot tweeted this in the New York Times interactive page. Change in voting age population between 2016 and 2020 in various states.
Oh.
Okay,
All
the
right.
table below shows the shifts in the voting age population
I don't see any table.
of the Trump coalition, which is white voters with no college degree, and the Biden coalition, which is minority voters and white voters with college degree in individual states. So you can see in these individual states how it
Now
changes.
I can see a table. Okay.
For example, Pennsylvania. The Trump 16 margin was 44,292 votes in Pennsylvania.
All right.
It was bigger in Pennsylvania than it was in Wisconsin, which was 22,000, and Michigan, which was 10,000. Okay. So Pennsylvania, Trump wins by 44,292 votes. Since 2016, in that state of Pennsylvania, the Trump coalition, which is white voters with no college degrees, has lost 431,000 voters. The Biden coalition, which is minority voters and white voters with a college degree, has gained 449,000. That's nearly an 800,000 vote swing toward Biden based on demographics alone in the state of Pennsylvania. And that's why I'm not paying too much attention to Republican claims that in the last 2 months they've out-registered Democrats by like 5.
Okay.
Who
Well,
cares?
yeah,
Look at these demographics here. Look at the polls,
I see them now.
right?
Yes.
Biden is ahead in Pennsylvania, and this is a big help to him. In Wisconsin, not quite as dramatic. That was a 22,000-point win for Trump. He's lost 48,000 of his voters, and Biden's gained 140,000. In North Carolina, it's really dramatic. North Carolina, Trump won by 173,000 votes. That's what we have to make up. Well, Trump's lost 73,000 of his voters, but Biden's gained 524,000.
Okay.
Just going by
That's
demographics. In Michigan, 10,000 vote margin for Trump. The Trump coalition's lost 248,000, and the Biden coalition's gained 381,000. So that's a 600,000 so on more or less change there. That's big. Georgia.
Yeah, we like that.
Georgia, Trump won by 211,000. He's lost 81,000 of his voters, and Biden's gained 542,000.
Okay. These numbers are nice.
Florida, you got to love Florida, right? Florida,
Sure,
Trump
why
won
not?
by 113,000 votes.
All right.
And remember, Florida's old. Florida changes,
Yes.
right? Trump has lost 359,000 of his voters.
Yeah, they're
Biden's
lost too.
gained
They don't know where they are.
1.5 million of his.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, that's more.
Similar in Arizona, 91,000 Trump lead in 2016.
Oh,
that was the margin.
a little twist
And the
in
Trump
Arizona.
coalition, again, which is white voters with no college degree, has gained 45,000 in Arizona, but the white college voters and minorities has gained 500,000.
Okay. So that overwhelms that there
Right?
too.
And the only one that's like stable is Iowa.
Oh.
Iowa, 147,000 vote win for Trump. He's lost 58,000, and Biden's gained 72,000. So, that's not dramatic the way Florida is. But the demographics are not favoring Trump here either. And so, yet again, this is a reason why this is not 2016.
Okay. Well, cool. I hope we get and count many of those votes.
Right? Okay. Now, looking at numbers, Trump got beaten on large dollar donations, on small dollar donations, came in October 163 million behind Biden in cash, and this is after blowing well over $1 billion, which is why tomorrow, just before the debate, that's the day now, another fundraiser for Trump. And so the Republicans are starting to ask, we're losing. Where'd the money go? Who stole the money? Where'd you spend this money on?
Me.
Well, you got to wonder. So, that always happens in losing campaigns. But in July, August, and September, Trump MAGA spent $181 million to bring in $236 million, meaning it was spending 70 cents for every dollar raised.
Right. Okay.
The committee had spent $59 million to bring in $125 million in April, May, and June, a ratio of 47 cents for every dollar. So as the campaign went on, they spent more and more money to raise money. Right? Or another way of looking at it is some GOP consultants made $181 million over 3 months sending people annoying texts and emails.
Okay.
That's the way SV.A looks at it. $181 million telling people about the 800% match if you act in the next 10 minutes.
Right. Okay.
That's where the money went. I told you, I've been getting all these texts from them.
Right.
Hi, it's Tim Scott. You really
Tim.
need to do this. Hi, it's Don Jr. If you don't reply in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to set my hair on fire and turn blue. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Set your hair on fire.
I mean, never works.
Right. So, again, Biden, every way you look at it, where Trump is campaigning, how he's acting, how the money's being spent, what the polls look like, the polls are only part of the picture. They just match the rest of the picture. And that's why I think Trump is losing and Biden's winning.
Okay.
You want to quantify it? Go to 538.
All right. Is that an assignment?
Oh, if you want.
Okay. Let's see. I'm looking at this question that just came through on Twitter here. I'm trying to decide whether we have already covered this or not. But let's see. The question here: to what extent do the polls factor in the demographic changes that Greg mentioned?
Well,
see.
It's hard because Nate Cohn was going over this in detail. If you're really interested in the question, you can go to Twitter and look at Nate Cohn's feed from today. As a pollster polling for the New York Times, he asks that very question. And it's difficult. It's very difficult to look at, for example, he uses Georgia. All right. And you look at the demographics and try to make the polls fit the new demographics. How do you handle race? Do you go by what people say they are?
Yeah, well, that's true. I mean,
do you go by what they're listed as in the census?
Which is
what if you're
usually a reflection of
multiracial?
what they say they are, but okay.
What if you're trying to pattern the poll so that you have the right demographic fit? Are you going to under or overcount various groups? What if there are more young voters than you plan? I mean, it's hard, and that's why the polls miss.
Yeah.
But in this particular case, if they're going to miss, they're going to miss to Biden's advantage.
I guess so. Well, you mean that is Biden will do better than the polls
Biden will do better than the polls if you didn't figure, the racial composition correctly, or if you undercounted the youth vote.
Yeah, and I would imagine they probably did undercount the youth vote to some extent.
That's how polls miss, know. So, we don't know the answer to that. The only way to answer that is to see what happened in the election and go back and look at the polls and see how close they got. And that's where the internals come in, and you look and say, okay, they said that, X percent of the population was going to be under 35, and it turned out higher than that, and that's how you know they missed, and that's why they missed, and that's why they didn't get that right. And for that reason, when you look at pollsters like Trafalgar or Rasmussen, they don't really tell you what's under the hood and how they're, allocating their different populations. That's why you don't believe them. And that's why when Trafalgar comes out and says, well, Gary Peters is trailing John James by 2 points in Michigan, you go, okay, Trafalgar, just add 6. Well, you can't do that. Well, why can't I? They don't tell us how they got there. And they're like different than every other poll that says that Peters is up over 50% and leading by between 4 to 6 points. So just add 6. It's just as good as what they do, and they can't disprove it because they don't tell you how they do it. I guess
that's true. Yeah. I mean, if they won't give you the methodology, then I guess you're entitled to do what you want. But
they're doing what they want, so why can't I do what I want?
I guess that's true. I think Armando would agree with you there.
That's my secret sauce, and it's not a secret. Just add 5 or 6.
Okay. It sometimes will work out pretty well. And
Aaron Astor actually has a chart on that.
Oh, yeah?
It turns out. And sometimes it turns out that they're actually off as much as 9. So no, it's not made up that I just happened to pick 5 or 6 out of the air.
It comes from observation, long time observation. And I guess you can just, if you write down the numbers by which they miss for long enough, you will get a number that you should use to adjust their polls.
Well, I'm going to give you the thing that the spreadsheet that Aaron Astor put together that shows you exactly that.
All right.
Right. This is the date released,
where it came from.
And the most recent on top. Okay. And let's do Michigan. So the state is Michigan. Trafalgar has the Trump margin as minus 1.8. That is to say, Trump leading. Mm-hmm. And the mean the day before for all the other pollsters was plus 8.
Okay.
So Trafalgar's off by 9.8. In Pennsylvania, they were off by 5.7 compared to the mean. In Wisconsin, plus 6.1. Again, Michigan 8. They really do Michigan. Michigan's like 9 points off, but everybody else, if you average them all together, Aaron Astor did like 20 polls here that they did, and it's got a 6.13 point bias to Trump. So that's why I said add 6.
Yeah. All right.
Here's my methodology, and it's not secret sauce.
Yeah. And it makes a certain amount of sense. I mean, again, the best spin you can put on it for like Trafalgar is, well, we're not just making up numbers. It's just this is our methodology.
Except they told us they are.
Well,
they said they've got a secret formula that picks up shy Trump voters, but we're not telling you.
Well, yes. No, well, I guess what they're
so that's making it up.
Well, I mean, to me, making it up is let's not do any work and just say he's leading by far. It's like, okay.
Well, that's what happens. Everybody else comes out with a plus 8, and they always come out the day after with a poll to balance it, saying, well, Trump's really a plus 8. But then I would
save on my phone bills, right? If I'm heading Trafalgar, you'll need to give me a huge bonus. I got a way to save $1 million on phone bills.
Yeah.
Don't call anybody and just say, take whatever somebody else did.
That's what Research 2000 did. They were. It does happen.
Okay. Well, at least it's well, good. Then I'm not the first one. I'm not I won't get all the scrutiny. All right. Yeah, but that essentially is part of it.
We're in good shape.
Yeah.
But just keep an eye when you watch the debate tonight for the narrative. Trump is a sadist. He's a sociopath. He's going to try to hurt Biden any possible way he can. That's what Biden has to prepare for, and that's what to watch for. Then the campaign's over, and then we win the election.
Okay. That seems pretty quick. Good. All right. Well, all that will happen in the next minute. We'll be right back. Welcome back now to the Kay Gordon Morning Show here on at Roots Radio. We're all wrapped up with Craig, but I think, once again, I think a good explanation of how things work and how the I make things up / use secret sauce / adjust for the demographics is all. It's many different ways of saying the same thing. All the pollsters, I guess, adjust the universe of voters that they're aiming for, and then adjust again the universe of voters that they actually got versus the universe they were hoping for, in order to try and get what they think is the most accurate read. But the secret sauce part of it is, what do you think the demographics of the final electorate in this state or district, wherever they're polling, is going to be? And there's going to be natural differences between where people think they settle. But the extent to which polls factor in demographic changes is, we don't know yet, but everybody, I think, tries to factor in those demographic changes. And, some more successfully than others, but it's a guessing game. And I think the part of the reason, for instance, that younger voters are very often subject to undercount and in these polling adjustments. The question, I guess, if and it's Bosengood's question here, if you were wondering who asked it, but the question here seems to be, I'm guessing that the question really is about the younger voters, since we were talking about the demographic changes in the various states to the bases from which the two candidates were drawing, and how the size of the Trump base had shrunk in most of these states that we looked at and grown in Biden's, and how much of that is baked into the polling. Probably some, because the numbers are so dramatic, but when you start to try and think about what the universe of voter turnout is really going to be, traditionally, they say, even when there's tremendous growth in the youth demographic in terms of the population, what the census would say, how many young eligible voters there are versus how many of them show up, they traditionally, I think, estimate a lot less. And that's part of their likely voter screen very often when they're trying to refine things toward the end of a campaign. This is how many, young people have registered to vote, but how many of them are likely voters? And a lot of pollsters' likely voter screen includes the question of, well, have you ever voted before? How do you determine that someone is a likely voter? And one of the it's a perfectly fine answer usually to that question. How do you know that somebody's going to vote when they say they're going to? Well, have you ever voted before? If the answer is yes, then you're likely to be a believable likely voter. And if the answer is no, then probably not. But there are several reasons for answering no. And certainly a 50-year-old who's registered to vote but has never voted is a pretty unlikely voter this time around. Whereas somebody who has never been registered before because they've been underage, but who's registered now, that's a little less fair to say that they're not a likely voter, except that here history comes into it. And the fact is that even those who are, for whatever reason, excited to register to vote when they turned 18 don't necessarily show up and finish the action, I guess, so to speak. And there's various reasons for it, whether they vote in person or vote by mail. My own son this is, I guess, his first presidential election, but he's voted before. But he's never had to vote by absentee ballot before. And this time he does. And we got him to, we signed him up, and basically we were able to say, we're going to watch you fill out this application for the absentee ballot to make sure that you do it, and he likely would have done it, but he may have done it late, or toward the late end of things if we weren't on top of him. And then, of course, the ballot shows up, and it was a long battle to get him to say, go pick it up out of the mailbox and take it back to your room. Now read the instructions about how to do it, and now do it. And have you done it? And have you done it? Have you done it? All the mailers from the local Democratic Party come to our house, of course, saying, your ballot hasn't been returned. They track these things. We know you asked for a absentee ballot, and we haven't seen it turned in yet, so what's the story? And I got 2 of those. And I have to keep texting him and saying, when are you going to do this thing? He knows it's important. He knows I know it's important. He knows I'm going to keep bothering him until he returns it. But it still took until now to get him to return it. Long enough for the local Democrats to send 2 cards that said, don't wait. And I had to emphasize that to him. You're almost out of time here. There's only about 10 mailing days left before the election. You got to get that thing in there. The mail sucks these days. And if you want to have any sort of notice, I don't know what it's like in Virginia, the mail-in ballots. If you want to have any sort of notice of any defect in your ballot and have a chance to correct it, as some states offer you the opportunity to do, you're losing out on that window. And that's kind of all it takes is for, to put enough of those ballots in the hands of kids who don't quite feel the same pressure and or who might not be all that familiar with the way things work, in particular the mailing system. Some of these kids at 18 years old, 20 years old, have basic questions about how the mail works. Like, where do I buy a stamp? Or for my son, for years, not the case anymore, but for years, when he would have to write a letter for something for an assignment for school or something, and we'd help him out with the thing, and he'd say, all right, well, I got a stamp. Where do I put it? I mean, they're all electronic, right? So they're doing real snail mail. I've seen a picture of mail. It's what they use for the icon for email. I've seen you carrying in the mail, but I've never sent anything. Where on the envelope, like literally, where on the envelope does the stamp go? Probably a corner, right? Which corner? They don't know. And then now he knows where the stamp goes, but where do I get a stamp? He even asked me yesterday, all All right, so this is it. He sent me a picture of the sealed ballot just to say, I've got all the things in the right place on this envelope, right? The address, the return address, the stamp, everything's in the right place? Yes. Now, how do I mail it? You take it to a mailbox or to a post office, or you can go to the mail office on campus where you go to pick up packages or something. You can go and say, where do I put outgoing mail? And they'll show there's probably a mailbox or a mail slot or something that people who are more familiar with the mail system and use it will know where these things go, and they send their cards and letters out that way. This is new for you. You actually have to ask, how do I mail? And so if it's happening here, it's happening tens of thousands of places all around the country. And kids who are shy about asking, or who think, the election's in November. It's October now, so I got plenty of time. And might even just mail it. And they'll be okay if they mail it and get postmarked on November 1st or November 2nd or even November 3rd, for that matter. In many states, it's just fine. But, they don't realize what kind of time crunch we're under. And it doesn't take that many of them to do that, to start eating into the demographic advantage that's out there on paper, is what I'm saying. All right. So how do you factor that in? It's just a big guess. And each pollster makes the same guess a little bit differently. So I think we've been over that ground. It's just kind of interesting to remind ourselves what goes into polling, especially if you're going to let polls drive you to hide under a desk for whatever reason, then, and you want to get out from under that desk, it's best to understand this stuff, even if you only understand it at the most simplistic level, like I do. All right. Let's see what else we have to share, hiding in Pocket and in the Twitter feed. There's an awful lot. Let's go back to the Atlantic as we started the show. And I'm running out of free articles for the month, but we're not too far from the end of the month. David Frum, who I usually don't go to as a source on these things, even when he's saying things that generally agree with where we are on these things, I'm still a little resentful of the fact that we have to piggyback sometimes. But he makes a good entry here. With some good ideas to things to watch out for as we come to the end of the election. How to defend against a lame duck Trump. 4 risks to guard against now, he writes in the Atlantic, and that's kind of where my focus is shifting. I think the action comes afterwards, and things have shifted a little bit in that too, from what do we do when Trump refuses to acknowledge the loss and refuses to leave office to, maybe the problem isn't so much that as what do we do even if Trump does acknowledge the loss and says he's preparing to leave office? What might he still do in the interim? Because there's a lot of damage that can be done that way, even without the damage of refusing to acknowledge the validity of the elections. So here's Frum's view of it. The polls are grim for President Donald Trump. His campaign faces a big and worsening money disadvantage. His closing arguments appeal only to the most hyper-partisan Republicans. Many have worried about the transition after a Trump electoral defeat. Will Trump leave office quietly and peacefully? But there are other less dramatic dangers to ponder, too. Dangers that we would do well to anticipate and guard against. First on the list here, one that's familiar to listeners of the show, funding the government. Familiar as a problem, but not necessarily familiar to us as a transition problem, because these things are usually not part of a transition problem. But this time it will be. The resolution funding the federal government expires, as Joan told us last time we discussed this issue, expires December 11th. If it's not renewed, of course, the U.S. government shuts down, as it did for 35 days in December of 2018 and January 2019, now the longest shutdown in U.S. history. That shutdown badly hurt the U.S. economy in the fourth quarter of 2018. Fortunately, the economy was strong enough in 2018 and 19 to absorb the shock, but things are different right now. A pandemic is raging, unemployment has surged in its wake, and President Trump nursing a wounded ego, may be in a vengeful mood. To make things worse, the new Congress will not be seated until January 3rd. The outgoing Senate majority may, therefore, feel it has a limited amount of time to impose its priorities on an incoming Biden administration. It may feel it has little to lose and perhaps something to gain by working with Trump to force its will while it can. That is, I guess, to try and shoehorn in some sort of measures that will hem in or obstruct or undermine or delegitimize in some way the incoming Biden administration in a must-pass bill that, if the government's not open and funded and working, especially during a pandemic and especially during a transition during a pandemic, terrible things could happen, and they might try to leverage that and say, you need to give us these things, even though it will damage the ability of the incoming Biden administration to accomplish its agenda. One, we want that on the Republican side. And two, you don't want a shutdown, do you? And we'll give you a shutdown and make things worse unless you give us what we want. It may end up being the case that Democrats are going to have to say, we may have to endure this shutdown to prevent hamstringing the incoming administration and the new Congress. And of course, it may be the case that Democrats say it's somehow worth that risk to keep the government funded and running. What's not in this right up here from is that Trump could say, well, I don't care whether you've come to an agreement or not. I'm going to veto this continuing resolution. And, this exists as a possibility. Just, why are you doing it? Why? Because I want to hurt people. I mean, the other Atlantic piece that we read earlier in the show that Greg brought to our attention makes this an explicit possibility. I don't think I'm going to get any. I may or may not get ancillary benefit out of it politically, or my base might, or the people who might seek to succeed me as the Republican standard bearer might get some benefit out of it. But that's not that's not my chief interest as Donald Trump. My chief interest as Donald Trump is I want to hurt the people who I feel have hurt or insulted me. Joe Biden, by running against me when I'm the greatest president who ever lived. How dare you do this? And the American people for failing to recognize this and electing Joe Biden instead of me. You will all suffer, and I will burn it all down just to do it. I mean, it is a possibility. It's not even mentioned in here, and I can't believe that's actually left out of there. Next up, a self-pardon crisis. After his presidency, Trump will face a large number of legal hazards. Most of them involve state law, but some will be federal, especially credible allegations of tax fraud. Trump has asserted a right to pardon himself. Many legal scholars disagree, but the question has never been tested in court over the long history of the U.S. presidency, because no one has ever dared before, right? It was too embarrassing to even contemplate. And who knows what a John Roberts-led Supreme Court majority, reinforced by Amy Coney Barrett, will think of the matter. And by the way, by way of update, while Greg and I were speaking during the first two segments, the Senate Judiciary Committee came together and very quickly approved the appointment and sending the nomination onto the floor. It was a 12-0 vote, unanimous in their telling of things, but because the Democrats boycotted the vote. And, to no avail, of course, the nomination now goes forward, and we can remind everybody what the process is. Basically, McConnell is looking for a Sunday confirmation vote, and we explained why Sunday the other day. But, yes, okay, so you're up to date on the basic news of it. Back to David Frum's contemplation here, right? Who knows what a John Roberts-led Supreme Court majority, reinforced by Amy Coney Barrett, will think of the idea of issuing self-pardons. Trump seems likely to try the pardon, and in doing so might plunge the nation into convulsion. Making things more complicated is the uncertainty about what a president can pardon for. The IRS has the power to forgive all or part of a taxpayer's liability, but can a president direct the IRS to forgive his own debt? That question also has never arisen, and it may arise now. You understand the difference there? I mean, it's one thing to say, I will pardon myself for, either for anything that might come up, whether it's been contemplated or not, or for specific crimes. But the IRS is kind of an odd duck, and tax avoidance is kind of an odd an odd charge. I mean, it becomes a criminal count against you, but the IRS kind of has to initiate the process, and they have some independence in terms of how and whether they do that. And so it's an interesting question. Can, through the pardon power, that's an interesting way of approaching it. Can, through the pardon power, the president direct the IRS not to, direct them to forgive his tax liability? Or does it have to be, I pardon myself for any tax crimes that may arise from the action of the IRS? He may have to do things that way. I'm not really sure. That's a more complicated question more complicated than it needs to be. The real point is that's one of the things we can expect from a lame duck Trump, and we're going to have to figure out how we deal with it. And I don't know how much there is to do. Last call at Mar-a-Lago is the third item here. He envisions it a little differently than I do, but along the same general lines. As of mid-September, the Washington Post has identified about $1.1 million of government funds directly paid to Trump enterprises over the course of 274 presidential visits to Trump properties. This estimate is certainly low. The State Department, for example, has declined to make its records of spending at Trump properties available until after the election. And the estimate is dwarfed by the sums Trump has collected from Republican candidates and Republican Party funds, as well as from domestic and foreign favor seekers. But the flow from taxpayers is the money most directly under his control, and the easiest for him to accelerate should his presidency near its end. He envisions it this way, and I hadn't thought about this possibility, but it seems pretty likely. Now, there are about 11 weeks between Election Day and Inauguration Day. Trump could spend every single day of them at Mar-a-Lago, enriching himself at taxpayer expense right up to the end. Yeah, I mean, after he loses the election, if he accepts that outcome and doesn't think he's going to be able to fight his way back to the presidency, why stay in the White House, which he says he hates, when he could fly down to Mar-a-Lago, stay there, say, I don't have any responsibilities to anybody, I don't have anything I'm trying to impress anybody with, I'm going to hang out at Mar-a-Lago for a number of reasons. One, I like it better. Two, it'll piss people off and possibly hurt them. And three, I make money when I'm down here. The Secret Service has to pay me for the rooms and bungalows that it rents from me. I will go down there. Like the thing I threw out as a possibility the other day was him saying, well, I'm still entitled to Secret Service protection as a former president, and I'm going to be spending all my time here, and I will direct the Secret Service and other responsible entities to spend, millions installing state-of-the-art security equipment in anticipation of the Secret Service being a constant presence here and guarding my person for the rest of my life. And ordinary spending decisions that a responsible person and a president, even a former president who, thinks that it matters what the public thinks of him, would decide not to do. But I guess you could order some pretty outrageous expenses, even if that money doesn't end up in your pocket. If you like the idea of there being, tricked out laser alarm systems of some kind, whatever, ordinarily a president in good standing might not even actually encounter a great deal of resistance in recommending that such an installation be made. But, of course, if you're on your way out after being unceremoniously dumped as one of the least popular incumbent presidents of all time, then spending that kind of money, probably not going to look all that good, but what do you care, right? So, but a totally different scheme is to simply say, I'm going to just go to my property and make the Secret Service rent bungalows from me as far, as long as I can. Totally different avenue of corruption. And then last one here, a final round of legal abuses. Trump never realized his fantasy of locking up his political opponents, and now it seems he never will. But there is one last service his politicized attorney general can do for him before returning to whatever law firm will have him, and that is dirtying those opponents on the way out the door. As Trump leaves office, actions he kept secret will become public. His reputation, already bad, will sink even further into the muck. His one and only defense, if it is one, is to try to paint everybody else as just as dirty as he is. His hopes for the future, starting with staying out of prison, depend on transforming the remains of the Republican Party into an ongoing Trump Defense League, like those bogus anti-defamation groups stepped up by New York City mobsters in the 70s. Interesting thought. And the surest way to achieve that end is by empowering the QAnon fantasy to become a power block inside the Republican Party. In the original QAnon myth, Trump was a messiah battling a demonic deep state. Now he'll be reimagined as a martyr instead, or perhaps as a messiah awaiting a second coming. The more Trump can propagate wild claims during his lame duck presidency, the tighter he can bolt the conservative messaging machine to his cause during his post-presidency. After his bankruptcies in the late 1980s, Trump extolled his Art of the Comeback in a 1997 book. Nearing age 75 and after repudiation at the polls, he's unlikely to have any comeback awaiting him, but he can at least work for the gratification of his vindictiveness, inflicting a final act of retaliation against the nation he will now hate, just as a narcissist always hates those who escape his dominion and control. It's another interesting possibility. I'm sure there are many, many more, but I think thinking at this point probably needs to shift. All the thinking that we could possibly do and still have an application for post-election, I think has probably already been done on the prospect of his refusing to leave office. The rest of the work, I think, at this point needs to be about what to do about minimizing the damage that he can do, even if he does acknowledge that he's on the way out. All right. Greg mentioned the Post's article about his growing frustrations with Christopher Wray, FBI director, and somehow with Bill Barr, his attorney general, for not charging his political enemies with specific crimes. That's a pretty serious issue for the transition time as well. Let me take a look at this Post article. There were, I know that there was at least one thing pointed out by people who were tweeting the article around some highlights to pull out of it, but I don't find those tweets now for whatever reason. I usually try to put those away so we can long story short some of these things, but maybe not on this one. Trump weighs firing the FBI director after the election, as frustration with Wray and Barr grows. He's looking for criminal charges to be lodged against people he doesn't like, and I'm curious myself as to why they're not doing it. They've done so much that he's asked for already. I'm not sure why they're not doing this. I'm a little curious to see whether this explains anything. Probably not. President Trump and his advisors have repeatedly discussed whether to fire FBI Director Christopher Wray after Election Day, a scenario that could also imperil the tenure of Attorney General William Barr, as the president grows increasingly frustrated that federal law enforcement has not delivered his campaign the kind of last-minute boost that the FBI provided in 2016, according to people familiar with the matter. I wonder if he ever wonders why Comey did what he did, given that Obama was supposedly pulling all these strings and spying on his campaign. I don't know why he thinks Comey did this, but I guess it will remain a mystery. The conversations among the president and senior aides stem in part from their disappointment that Wray in particular, but Barr as well, have not done what Trump had hoped. Indicate that Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden, his son Hunter Biden, or other Biden associates are under investigation, these people say. Like others, they spoke, of course, on condition of anonymity. In the campaign's closing weeks, the president has intensified public calls for jailing his challenger, much as he did for Hillary Clinton in 2016. Trump has called Biden a criminal without articulating what laws he believes the vice president has broken. People familiar with the discussion say Trump wants official action similar to the announcement made 11 days before the last presidential election when Comey put out his word on this, and I guess just isn't getting it. We'll see whether there's any reasoning for that in the skim of the article during our next break. We'll be right back. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kgrowx@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kgrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the K-Grow in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Into our final segment, I find nothing in here that actually explains anything to me in terms of why Wray and Barr aren't doing it, other than I guess we're supposed to infer from this that they simply don't want to involve themselves in outright and obvious political corruption, but they already have involved themselves in it to enough of an extent that nobody trusts them, and everybody would like to see their activities investigated. So I'm not sure why they just don't go forward with this, but I guess they must. It'd be interesting if it was really because they anticipated actual legal liability in the post-election period, because, well, that means something. If the current Attorney General and current Director of the FBI believe that by doing what the President's asking for, they would find themselves on trial as criminals after the election, that would be worth knowing, to say the least. There is a nugget or two in here that I thought was somewhat interesting here, leading to another story, which I think I have in pocket somewhere, noting that Chief of Staff Mark Meadows has expressed frustration that Wray will not declassify more documents relevant to the FBI's 2016 probe of Russia's election interference, though federal law enforcement officials have not been told specifically what documents Meadows wants, according to people familiar with the matter. I did see raised as an issue the other day that Trump, of course, had been tweeting wildly some time ago that he had personally ordered the immediate declassification of all of these documents, and yet we're not seeing any of them, which means a couple of things. One, it means that people who it means that he didn't order their immediate declassification at all, which is, I guess, really the only story that actually needs to be teased out of this. And it happens the other day that there was a story about that. Let's see if I can find where that was. It's crushed under so many crazy stories that I have here. Man, I don't even. I still think I'm scrolling, and I think I'm only like 2 days into the stories. But do you recall all of this? I mean, that there was this moment during which Trump insisted that he was himself ordering the declassification, I guess, and release of all of the documents relevant to the 2016, the investigation of Russian interference in the 2016 election because he believed, he insisted that he believed that they would be evidence of, his accusations of Obama administration spying on his campaign, and that they were framing them up for all this stuff, and that the whole investigation that launched the Mueller probe was faked up, and he could prove it by releasing all of these materials. And he, now I'm not certain why I'm not finding this thread here. Let's see, was this no, it's another one. But he was tweeting that he wanted to, that he had declassified all of this stuff, and then we never got any of it. And so it turns out that, I guess, declassification power, we know it does reside in the presidency, but he apparently didn't actually invoke it and left it instead to the people who usually exercise declassification authority inside the FBI and in the Department of Justice and elsewhere, the normal bureaucracy that handles these things, and that he didn't. Dang, I'm going to have to look back in my Twitter feed for this a couple days, too. But one of the things that was really surprising about this was that in a lawsuit that must have stemmed from out of a journalistic pursuit, either through Freedom of Information Act or some other avenue, they began looking. The president says that he declassified all this stuff. So where is it, and how come I can't see it and report on it? And in the court proceedings, I guess they ask Mark Meadows about this, and Mark Meadows testifies, under oath, whether it was in a deposition or in a courtroom, probably a deposition, but just comes straight out and says, the president tweets things like, I hereby authorize the immediate declassification and dissemination of all these documents. We don't actually do that. That is to say, the president's tweets, in this case, in prior cases where we've said when the president tweets it, that's it. That's a presidential order and you have to follow it. In this case, and in many others, it doesn't matter that the president tweets these things. We don't take what the president says on Twitter seriously. We don't actually do those things, which is a remarkable turnaround from where they've been in the past. I'm going to have to scroll down and try and find that thing at the same well, who knows? I'll have to scroll down and find it for inclusion in the roundup, because if I spend the time scrolling now, we're not going to be able to cover all the rest of these fun stories. Let's see. I wish it was easier to find, because it was really rather remarkable, and we could have read the transcript of Meadows's testimony. But I give you, I think, the general idea, the general gist of what he had to say. All right. Let's see. Oh yes, on a related note, I guess we can mention that the FBI has issued a statement. They were, I guess, driven to issue some sort of statement on the Hunter Biden laptop thing after Director of National Intelligence Ratcliffe came out with a far too politicized statement saying that there was no indication to him, there was no intelligence indicating that the laptop itself and its provenance and the story that Republicans hoped the laptop would be believed by the American public to tell was of some sort of, evidence of corruption on Hunter Biden's part, and probably in their mind Joe Biden as well. But basically that he was in a very politicized way. Just the very nature of what it was he was trying to say was politicized. There is no intelligence evidence that he's aware of that points to the fact that it's conclusively a Russian disinformation campaign. That is saying too much, of course, both for political purposes and for intelligence analysis purposes. The fact that he's got no intel to indicate that it is a Russian disinformation operation is not the same as saying I have information indicating that it's not. There's no intelligence that says it isn't either, is the real thing. And the job at this point of the intelligence community is develop some intelligence that will tell you one way or the other. Investigate the situation and find out what's going on. But what we do have is, at the moment, circumstantial evidence that most intelligence hands say the operation bears some or all of the hallmarks of Russian disinformation campaigns. But we don't have anybody on tape anywhere saying, let's launch this disinformation campaign. That's true. But that's not the same thing as saying there's no evidence and never will be any evidence that it is a disinformation campaign. It's a little bit of a nuanced story, but what a non-politicized director of national intelligence would say is no comment, or we've got nothing that says it, but that's all there is. Instead, we have it reported this way. So let's see. Jackie Heinrich, reporting, a Fox News reporter actually, tweeting out the other day a thread that she says is reposted for absolute clarity, but I don't know how absolute it is. The FBI indicates it is investigating the possibility of foreign interference on Hunter Biden's laptop. I don't know whether that's interference on the actual physical laptop itself or whether the laptop is part of an interference campaign, but probably both. But the letter from the DNI, which says we have nothing to add, or it's not the letter from DNI, it's from the assistant director in the Office of Congressional Affairs at the ODNI, or rather at, I'm just looking up the letterhead here, at the DOJ. There's a letter that's included in this tweet. The fact that they have nothing to add to Ratcliffe's claim that it's not Russian disinformation adds that if actionable intel develops, the FBI may, at its discretion, I guess, inform the Homeland Security Committee. So the letter, basically, it's in here. We can kind of read through it quickly. It's to Ron Johnson, the chair of the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee in the Senate. So responding to the letter that he sent them on October 17th, was sent to the FBI regarding the authenticity of certain information provided to your committee, including whether such information is linked to a foreign adversary's influence operation or is otherwise fraudulent. You also ask, they say of his letter, several questions about a laptop computer reportedly produced pursuant to a grand jury subpoena. As you may know, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence has advised the American public that in advance of the 2020 election, a number of nation states plan to use covert and overt influence measures in an attempt to sway voter preferences and perspectives. The type is a little small here, so it's getting difficult to read here. Let me bring things closer. Also to, of course, sow discord in the United States and undermine the confidence of Americans in our democratic process. The FBI is the primary investigative agency responsible for the integrity and security of the 2020 election, and as such, we are focused on an array of threats, including the threat of malign foreign influence operations. Regarding the subject of your letter, we have nothing to add at this time to the October 19th public statement from the DNI about the available actionable intelligence. If actionable intelligence is developed, the FBI, in consultation with the intelligence community, will reevaluate the need to provide defensive briefings to you and the committee pursuant to established notification framework. Finally, the FBI advised the committee in its letter dated October 5th, 2020, consistent with long-standing Department of Justice policy and practice, the FBI can neither confirm nor deny the existence of an ongoing investigation or persons, of persons or entities under investigation, including members of Congress. That's an interesting thing to throw in there. As the Inspector General firmly reminded the Department and the FBI in recent years, this policy is designed to preserve the integrity of all Justice Department investigations and the department's ability to effectively administer justice without political or undue outside influences. Therefore, the FBI cannot provide any additional information, in response to the enumerated questions in your letter. And what does that mean, asks Jackie Heinrich in analyzing all of this. Democratic officials with knowledge of Intelligence Committee discussions tell her the FBI will not confirm exactly what they're investigating, adding that this may relate to the ongoing investigation around Rudy Giuliani that has been recently reported, as we've guessed here on the show as well. However, members of the Intelligence Committee have learned that the FBI is indeed investigating the provenance of the emails and whether it is part of a foreign disinformation operation, which the FBI would investigate whether or not the emails are real. That's important to keep in mind, too. The FBI's handling of John Paul McIsaac, the Delaware computer repair guy in all of this, indicates he is a target of the investigation, not a witness. That's interesting, too. McIsaac stated that he met with the FBI once or twice, and then the FBI stopped talking to him. There is bipartisan skepticism surrounding Ratcliffe's statement on Sunday, and this Democratic source says they believe Ratcliffe was trying to state that the FBI has not confirmed that this is disinformation, as Adam Schiff suggested. However, Ratcliffe went too far in trying to provide political cover in support of the president, which is an inappropriate action for a DNI. Ratcliffe is showing inexperience with intelligence by saying that the lack of intel proves there is no involvement. Folks within the FBI who are looking into this matter very much suspect but do not know for sure if foreign powers are at play. This source adds, members of both parties within the Senate Intelligence Committee are skeptical of the idea that we would know definitively at this time the matter is not part of a foreign intel op because it has all the hallmarks of a potential foreign intel op. Regarding the FBI's statement that they have nothing to add to Ratcliffe's statement, they understand this to mean the FBI has nothing to add about available actionable intelligence at this time. But the investigation is ongoing, not that they understand it as affirming Ratcliffe. Finally, per her talks, Jackie's talks with sources tonight, that was yesterday, although probably happened actually on the 20th and leaked into the 21st, this being a 1 a.m. tweet dated October 21st. Big bipartisan takeaway verified by Republican and Democratic sides. As of now, investigators have revealed no evidence showing that this is a Russian disinformation campaign, but the investigation is ongoing and it hasn't been ruled out. So that, I guess, is where we stand on finding out the provenance of both the laptop itself, the physical machine, and everything that's on it. And that apparently bipartisan agreement on the Senate Intelligence Committee that what the DNI was trying to get across with his statement probably isn't true and exceeds his mandate and shows a lack of intelligence analysis skills and is overtly political cover for the president, which is inappropriate all by itself. So, okay, I think we're up to speed on that, although I wish I had more easily at hand the information we were looking for earlier about what the FBI was in fact up to and what they were being asked to do. All right, let's see. Jumping to a couple of other items here. Let's see. What's our top priority at this point? Kind of looking around, and this was kind of an interesting possibility as well. I noticed a tweet yesterday from Ben Smith, now at the New York Times, commenting on Ken Vogel's tweet. Ken Vogel, of course, now also currently at the New York Times, with the Elliot Broidy story, about which we haven't really spent a great deal of time updating things. Just know that he's found himself in trouble again, this time on reporting his foreign lobbying activity, or well, the problem is for not reporting it, and it looks like he'll be pleading guilty to a violation of the foreign, what is it, the FARA statute, but unregistered, not reporting his, what should have been declared and registered foreign agency status, lobbying for foreign countries. But let's see. So Ken Vogel updating the situation the other day, tweeting what was then new news. Elliot Broidy's guilty plea relates to illegal lobbying on behalf of Malaysian and Chinese interests. And that always, of course, raises eyebrows because it overlaps with the various, the one central character in all of this, the Chinese dissident billionaire who also finds himself constantly entangled with Steve Bannon, on whose yacht Steve Bannon was living when he was arrested. We haven't heard much about his arrest and what's coming of that. But anyway, Vogel continues on here saying, but prosecutors plan to introduce evidence at sentencing related to his Middle East work, including efforts to influence U.S. policy towards Qatar, according to a then linked New York Times article. And Ben Smith commenting on that, there were a whole series of revelations from hack and leak operations around Qatar and the United Arab Emirates that I suspect would be covered differently now. It's kind of an interesting thought. That's true. Here's the Times article that Ken Vogel was referring to, was an update on what's going on with Broidy. I might as well let you know where that stands. Elliot Broidy pleads guilty in foreign lobbying case. Former fundraiser for President Trump admitted to a role in a covert campaign to influence the administration on behalf of Chinese and Malaysian interests. So just to up-to-date you on what they were. We can skim through this. Broidy agreed to forfeit $6.6 million to the federal government and cooperate with prosecutors on a range of potential investigations related to his fellow conspirators and others. The charge is a felony, could carry a prison sentence of up to 5 years, but his cooperation is likely to result in a lesser sentence. Sentencing hearing is scheduled for February 12th, so well into what we hope to be the Biden administration. Broidy's guilty plea relates to his arrangement with the fugitive Malaysian financier Joe Low, or Lau, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, L-O-W is the way it's anglicized here, who was not identified by name in court filings or during the hearing on Thursday. Broidy admitted that he accepted $9 million from Mr. Lau, some of which was then paid to an associate to push the Trump administration for the extradition of a Chinese dissident and to drop a case related to an embezzlement scheme from a Malaysian sovereign wealth fund that the United States has accused Mr. Lau of engineering. That's the MDB-1 or 1MDB that keeps popping up in the news. Interesting, though. Broidy lobbying for the extradition of that same Chinese dissident who seems to be funding and underwriting the Bannon anti-Biden operations. So why anybody thought that would be successful, I'm not entirely sure. Unless, I guess it's possible that if they thought that Trump were to win re-election, he might say, well, now I'm done with this Chinese guy, so yeah, I'll extradite him, sure, as a favor to Broidy and maybe as a way of retaliating. Or I guess he might think as a way of repairing relations with the Chinese, the cross currents between this and trade wars and tariffs and the coronavirus accusations it makes, there's no telling where Trump comes out of that. I guess it's whoever speaks to him last. And who knows, he may actually also exit office by pardoning Broidy in all this, and he'll never be sentenced and therefore never cooperate. Very tangled web, to say the least. Let's see. Broidy also admitted to meeting with a Chinese government official who was seeking the extradition of the dissident, who was not identified in court, but who is known to be the billionaire Guo Wenyi, an outspoken critic of China who has been charged by its government with corruption and is seeking asylum in the United States. Broidy did not disclose the foreign lobbying work with the Justice Department under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, FARA, that we referred to earlier, but he knew he should have, he told Judge Colleen Kolar-Kotelly of the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia in a virtual hearing. This is the second time Broidy has pleaded guilty to a felony. He pleaded guilty in 2009 to a felony charge which was later reduced to a misdemeanor in an unrelated pension fund bribery case. After that run-in with the law, he retreated from Republican fundraising for years, but guess when he reemerged? As a leading fundraiser for Trump in 2016. Wow. When Trump won, Broidy began aggressively promoting his connections with the new administration to politicians, business executives, and governments around the world. His defense company won big contracts from the UAE and Angola, and Broidy discussed the possibility of a visit to Mar-a-Lago, the president's private resort in Florida, for an Angolan politician from whom he was seeking to collect additional payments. Broidy's guilty plea relates only to his work on behalf of Malaysian and Chinese interests, but the judge says prosecutors intend to introduce evidence at sentencing relating to his efforts to obtain business from a Middle Eastern country, which is most likely the UAE, and his efforts to influence U.S. policy toward a second Middle Eastern country, which is known to be Qatar. They were, of course, at not yet shooting war with one another, which ended up, I thought, resulting in the eventual blockade, right, of Qatar. Very weird, and another weird and complicated story with Trump interests on competing sides there. Prosecutors also said on Tuesday that additional charges may be filed in the case, citing the pending nature of some other co-conspirators in this case and their cases. Some of Broidy's associates in the scheme with Mr. Lau have already been charged, including Nikki Lum Davis, a fundraiser who pleaded guilty in August and agreed to cooperate with prosecutors. Another, George Higginbotham, a former Justice Department employee, pleaded guilty in 2018 to conspiring to lie to banks about the source of tens of millions of dollars he funneled into the United States from Mr. Lau. The federal authorities have accused Lau of playing a key role in the embezzlement of millions of dollars from the Malaysian fund One Malaysia Development Berhad, or 1MDB. Lau has, of course, denied wrongdoing. Broidy's guilty plea came the same day it was revealed that an Asian subsidiary of Goldman Sachs would plead guilty to charges in the U.S. to resolve a foreign corruption and bribery case over its involvement in the 1MDB matter. Mr. Lau had retained Broidy to use his connections to push to end that 1MDB investigation. Broidy admitted on Tuesday that he'd asked Trump in June of 2017 if he would play golf with Prime Minister Najib Razak of Malaysia. Mr. Najib was not identified in court, but he was in office at the time and was planning a trip to Washington, despite being under investigation by federal prosecutors for his role in the embezzlement. Broidy says he believed that the golf game with Trump would please Mr. Najib, allowing him to try to resolve the 1MDB matter and potentially lead to business opportunities with the government of Malaysia. Najib did meet with the president in September of 2017, but he was denied the customary photograph in the Oval Office, let alone the golf outing, despite Broidy's repeated lobbying of Trump's aides. Najib was later convicted in Malaysia on corruption charges related to that 1MDB theft. So that's where that stands. I was interested also in Ben Smith's tweet. He linked to, remember his comment, there were a whole series of revelations from hack and leak operations around Qatar and UAE that he suspects would be covered differently now. How was it covered then? He points to BuzzFeed reporting from Kevin Collier back in May of 2018 under the title of How Two Persian Gulf Nations Turned the U.S. Media into Their Battleground. For the last year, Qatar and the United Arab Emirates have been leaking emails to journalists. Story rings a bell. We're not going to have time to read through it, but I thought I would include it along with Ben's tweet there for your own reading pleasure, I guess, during the rest of the day. But yeah, I recall sifting through this story back when it happened, And it now brings to mind the repeated tweets from Jesse Lee, formerly of the Obama administration, who's been tweeting over and over again since then. Mark my words, we're going to find out something seriously terrible and corrupt came out of the state visit to Saudi Arabia by the Trump administration right around the time that whole controversy was kicking off, too. What a tangled web that one is going to be. And that one will have to unravel after he's out of office. And that will likely become the subject of congressional investigations that end up going nowhere as we decide to look forward and not back on some of these state corruptions that the Trump administration involved itself in. Too bad. Well, I hope it doesn't result in absolutely nothing, but we'll be focusing on bigger picture and bigger fish to fry in that time, I'm sure. Whether anything comes of those things is yet to be seen as well. Stay tuned now for Justice Putnam with the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy.
From networksradio.com, you have been listening to K-Grow in the Morning with David Waldman.
I get the sense that there's a lot of leads uninvestigated in this story and in our own reading of it. Perhaps we could spend some time on that tomorrow. We'll be talking to Ian Reifowitz, of course, in the first hour. And now, Justice Putnam updates you on the many, many other stories for which you could justifiably despise the Trump administration. Next.